He shook his head and said, "So, okay. I killed them. Do you want me to say I'm sorry? I ain't. The only thing I'm sorry about is I got caught before I had a chance to even it with my brother. You can tell him from me, he's the luckiest guy in the world." The milkman, Lars Pokonski, covered a big chunk of Monroe County, Wisconsin in his daily route, hitting the road by 2 a.m. His truck was loaded and ready to go by 3:15 a.m., given that he slept by 9 p.m. each night. This left him with minimal time for a social life. When people found out he was a milkman, they'd often make comments about the crazy hours he worked. Without fail, Lars had a standard response he'd been using for years. "Sure, they're crazy hours," Lars would say, "but you'd be surprised at all the crazy things I see during those crazy hours." There was some truth to Lars's words. He frequently stumbled upon odd events and even odder people. However, over the years, he is used to the normal creepy events. He now needs something truly unusual to make him pause for a second look. On a Tuesday morning in September 1942, around 8 a.m., while driving on a narrow dirt road near Oakdale, Lars encountered a sight that was indeed out of the ordinary. He slammed hard on the brake. Milk bottles clanked in their heavy metal carriers as the truck came to an abrupt stop on the dirt road near Oakdale. A few feet ahead, a body on the road, a young girl. She was naked, except for a pair of torn silk socks. Without hesitation, Lars Pokonski, the milkman, leapt out of his truck and rushed to her side. The girl's faint breathing indicated she was alive, but the bloodstains on the ground beneath her and the deep wound in her abdomen revealed the severity of her injuries. Recognizing that moving her without help was out of the question, Lars sprinted about 150 yards to a nearby farmhouse. He called the sheriff and then returned to the wounded girl with the farmer's wife, who brought along some blankets. Other farmers came and suggested lifting her on a blanket and placing her in the back of a nearby truck for a quick trip to a doctor. Acting quickly, the group, including Lars, lifted her and rushed towards Dr. V.H. Kremer's office in Tomah. Despite the rough road, Lars did his best to support the unconscious woman. The can movement seemed to have some effect, bringing her back to semi-consciousness, accompanied by moans and mumbling. Concerned, Lars asked what happened, but her responses were disjointed. Eventually, they reached Dr. Kremer's office, and the doctor examined the girl for a few minutes before delivering a grim verdict. She was dead. And told them she did mention another injured girl in the woods. Lars and the truck driver hurried back to the dirt road outside Oakdale. At the same time, Sheriff Hallet Jenkins and Coroner Walter Ninnerman were arriving at the scene. After hearing about the injured girl, Sheriff Jenkins prioritized the search for her. Volunteers formed search parties, scouring the woods on both sides of the road. The search ended abruptly when Tomah Police Chief Chris Hendrickson's whistle pierced the air. Rushing to the source of the sound, the sheriff found the chief standing beside the lifeless body of a second girl. Like the first, she lay naked, revealing 3 gunshot wounds. Coroner Ninnerman confirmed a recent death, speculating on the possibility of intimate assault before the shooting. A ground search uncovered fresh tire tracks nearby. The sheriff sent his deputy for track preservation by a plaster cast. Despite extensive searching, no trace of the girl's clothing was found. The killer had seemingly taken all the clues with him. The only lead they had was the mention of a mother in Kenosha by the first girl. District Attorney Leo J. Goodman suggested checking on names like Braun and Baum with Lieutenant Perry Tusler in Kenosha. Braun and Baum were very common surnames in this area at the time. Surprisingly, later that evening Tusler reported a potential match, Dorothy Joyce Braun, aged 32, and her friend Neil Jon Pietrangeli. The DA sent this information to Sheriff Jenkins, who quickly found Neil's address in Sparta. Racing to her home, the family had tried to contain their worry by convincing themselves that Neil had chosen to extend her stay by another day. Despite hearing news about the 2 murdered girls near Oakdale on the radio, they never connected the incident with their daughter. Neil Pietrangeli's car, an Oldsmobile 2-door sedan with a 2-tone green color scheme, dark body, and lighter top, equipped with white wall tires and Wisconsin license plates, became the focus of attention. Sheriff Jenkins swiftly contacted the Wisconsin State Police, urging all checkpoints to find the car and hold anyone inside. The mystery surrounding the murdered girls' identities was confirmed when the sheriff took Neil Pietrangeli's family to the morgue. There, the victims were formally identified as Neil Jon Pietrangeli and her close friend Dorothy Joyce Braun. Both had been inseparable since high school and worked for the state. Back at the sheriff's office, Jenkins studied the likely route the girls took from Kenosha. He reached out to officials in every county along the route, requesting a check on gas stations and restaurants where the girls might have stopped and been seen with their potential assailant. The autopsy report on Joyce Braun revealed a fatal gunshot wound to her abdomen, causing massive internal bleeding. They found no cloth inside the wounds, suggesting the girls were naked before being shot. Evidence of intimate assault on both victims darkened the nature of the crime. Publicity surrounding the case yielded a breakthrough. A gas station owner near Tomah reported that a soldier driving a two-tone green Oldsmobile had stopped for gas on Monday night, paying with a state check belonging to Dorothy Joyce Braun. The soldier, with a southern accent, claiming to have lived in Mississippi and Arkansas, had picked up another soldier wearing an overseas cap near the gas station. Realizing the potential innocence of the second soldier, Sheriff Jenkins and DA Goodman turned their attention to the primary suspect. The new information was transmitted, resulting in a call from Police Chief Edward Holtz in Chippewa Falls, Wisconsin. The GI picked up near the gas station in Holtz's office and revealed that the potential culprit had asked him to take the wheel, claiming fatigue and intoxication. The GI had exited in Eau Claire, and the suspect had continued along Route 12. Considering the suspect may have crossed the state line into Minnesota, Jenkins informed the FBI of a potential violation of the Dyer Act. Additionally, given that Neil Pietrangeli's checkbook was missing, he alerted the Minnesota State Police to be vigilant for a soldier attempting to cash checks in her name. Within 12 hours, a bank cashier in La Sueur reported cashing a $25 check endorsed by Neil Pietrangeli. The soldier claimed to be her sweetheart and cashed the check as Robert T. Bailey. The photo of Bailey was matched with a description from the War Department, confirming him as AWOL from Fort Bragg, North Carolina. With a first-degree murder charge and a federal warrant for violating the Dyer Act, Robert T. Bailey was now the prime suspect. The FBI obtained a complete rundown on the AWOL soldier, describing him as 21 years old, 5 feet 11 inches tall, weighing 141 pounds, with a history of prison time and previous desertion. Despite having no known relatives in the Midwest, Bailey had a brother stationed at Fort Ord, California. According to Bailey's army mates, he had frequently expressed his intention to kill his brother because he once reported him to the police for violating his parole. Evaluating this information, Agent in Charge Stein remarked, "It sounds unbelievable, but Bailey has been heading westward since leaving Fort Bragg. I wouldn't be surprised if he's genuinely going to California to carry out that threat against his brother." Without hesitation, Stein alerted West Coast FBI offices, local and state police in California, and Fort Ord officials. Photos and descriptions of the fugitive were sent everywhere. All agencies were warned about Bailey being armed and dangerous. The breakthrough occurred around noon on Saturday, September 12, 1942, in Santa Maria, California, near Fort Ord. Ernest Blenn, a retired policeman, visited Police Chief W.T. Fairland to report a suspicious incident. The previous day, his teenage niece and a friend had arrived at his home after hitchhiking from the east with a young soldier they had met in Sioux City, Iowa. After dropping off the girls at Blenn's home, the soldier took a room in a nearby guest house. Initially, nothing seemed strange, and both girls noted that he behaved as a gentleman. However, Blenn became suspicious when he observed the next morning the soldier painting the white walls of his tires in black. He tried to talk to him about the army. Blenn noticed the soldier start to be very elusive, and he also noticed a .45 automatic in the soldier's waistband. Without revealing that he had seen the gun, Blenn chatted briefly, then drove to the police chief's office. Chief Felland inquired about the soldier's car, and Blenn described it as a two-tone green Oldsmobile. When asked for the name the soldier gave, Blenn responded, "Bob Baker." The chief showed him a photograph, confirming that it was indeed the same man. Bailey was still working on the Oldsmobile in the guest house driveway when the first group of police cars arrived, slowing down several doors away. Another car approached from the opposite direction, and a third emerged from an intersection directly opposite the guest house driveway. The first two cars advanced toward Bailey in a synchronized move, closing on him just as the third car joined the scene. Before Bailey could react, he found himself circled by officers with drawn guns. A detective quickly approached from behind, reaching under his jacket and grabbing the Colt .45 automatic from his waistband. Bailey raised his hands and submitted to a more thorough frisk, which revealed no other weapon. He stood silently. At the police station, he denied all knowledge of the double murder in Wisconsin. He explained his possession of one victim's car by saying that he had found it abandoned near Sioux City. He admitted that he was AWOL from Fort Bragg, but that was as far as he would say. Deputy DA Thomas Weldon told him, "They've got a soldier you picked up in Tomah right after the murders who have identified you. So has the gas station owner there. So has a bank cashier in Minnesota who cashed the Pietrangeli girls' check for you. They have the slugs removed from the girls' bodies. Of course, if they don't match slugs from this .45, our men just took off you. You might beat the murder charges. Think there's any chance of that, Bailey?" For a few brief seconds, Bailey's face held its look of go to hell. He shook his head and said, "So, okay. I killed them. Do you want me to say I'm sorry? I ain't. The only thing I'm sorry about is I got caught before I had a chance to even it with my brother. You can tell him from me he's the luckiest guy in the world." Bailey then agreed to confess. He had first seen the two girls when they stopped for a traffic light in Madison, Wisconsin at 7:30 on that Monday night. He walked over and asked them for a ride. He said they seemed hesitant at first, but then one of them said to the other, "He's a soldier. I guess it's all right." The back seat was covered with the girls' clothes, so he got in the front with the girls. He waited until they were close to the small town of Oakdale before he made his move and pulled out his gun. One girl seemed to think he was joking. "You bet I've got a gun," Bailey said, "and I'll use it if you don't do as I say." The girl at the wheel stopped the car and told him to get out. He shoved the gun against her neck and ordered her to turn onto a side road. She obeyed, but said, "Look, we're just a couple of working girls. We haven't anything you want." He ordered her to stop. Then at gunpoint, he forced both girls to get out of the car and take off their clothes. He insisted that he had committed no assault on both girls, and that his reason for making them remove their clothes was so that they would not run out to the highway and alert someone. All he wanted was plenty of time to get away from the scene of the robbery. He would not explain how or why he came to shoot them. He simply admitted that he had done so. On September 29, 1942, Robert T. Bailey pleaded guilty to the murder of Neil Jon Pietrangeli and was sentenced to life in the penitentiary. Wisconsin had no capital punishment. The charge of murdering Dorothy Braun was held, as insurance against Bailey ever being released on parole. In that unlikely event, he would have to face trial on the second murder charge. District Attorney Goodman told reporters, "Ensures his staying in prison till they take him out feet first." On July 5, 1945, in the Wisconsin State Prison at Waupun, Robert T. Bailey died. No record we could find can tell us what happened to him, but it was noted that, when hospital attendants carried out the wicker corpse basket containing Bailey's remains, they loaded it into the hearse, feet first.